Hi, welcome to the Remixer screencast. My name is Brad Head, and I'm a technical architect at Canada Health Infoway. The purpose of Remixer is to allow jurisdiction to apply business rules to the Pan-Canadian HL7 version 3 standards. This includes simple annotations that record specific jurisdictional rules, or may include changes to cardinality, changes to data types, changes to vocabulary, or simply changes to conformance statements, such as whether a piece of information is required or mandatory. These constraints can then be recorded by Remixer and fed into tooling to produce a jurisdictionally specific message interchange format file set that then can produce documentation and message builder libraries written in Java and C#.NET. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and log in to the Message Remixer, username and password, and I'll click the login button. That takes us into a list of delta sets, and here you can see we have a log off. We have a list of delta sets and documentation. We can create a delta set. These are existing delta sets here. These are the names. And let's go ahead and create a new delta set. Now what we need to do here is type in a description. This forms the main identifier. So we'll go ahead and type in CREX, and it's 4.3, and known as PIN in CREX for Saskatchewan. And we'll go ahead and say that we're doing this because it's a screencast. The source of this information is coming from SK PIN specifications. And for the realm code, we're going to use SK for Saskatchewan. Now what we're going to base this on is a version of the existing standards. Here we have 3 loaded into Remixer. We're going to go ahead and pick the CREX spec, and we'll save this new delta set. So now we have an empty delta set called CREX 4.3 bracket PIN. Its rationale is it's a Remixer screencast. We have source from Saskatchewan, and there's the version it's based on. Now we can edit it, we can share it, and we can delete it if we made a mistake. We're going to go ahead and just click on it and take us into where we're going to add changes. On this page here, what we've got is the title of the delta set, the CREX 4.3 for Saskatchewan. Over here we can download the delta set. We can write out some reports. We'll look at those later. But over here is where we're going to add the first delta or first change. So for our first constraint, we're going to change a field to be mandatory. In this case, we have an indication of a severity of a reaction. Because we're not using SNOMED, we need to make this association mandatory. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our add delta, and we're going to type in the name of the message type. Now that was repc mt something, and it'll go ahead and find it for us, and there it is, the very first one, allergy intolerance. We'll go ahead and click next, and that'll take us to a list of all the parts of that message type. Now in this case, the entry point of the main message here is called a causality assessment, and its business name is reported reactions. So you're going to go back and look at the path here. So it's causality assessment subject, observation event, subject of. That's the entity we need to change to be mandatory. So we'll go back to our form here and we'll look for that entry point. And let's take a look again. Yes, observation event, subject of. So let's go back and see if we can find that. There's observation event. We'll go ahead and open that up. And there is subject of. So we want to go ahead and define that. We're going to change it to be mandatory. So that's a definition. So let's click next. And here we can see that the cardinality is 0 to 1. It definitely is subject of. We want to change that to 1 to imply mandatory. And we also want to change the conformance level to mandatory. And we'll click save. We could save and add, but we'll go ahead and click save. Now we've stored our very first constraint. It's an association type. The relationship is subject of, and we've set a definition. We've changed it to be mandatory. And that is our first constraint applied to the message set. Okay, let's add our second constraint. Here we're going to add a fixed value to a field. Again, this is because Saskatchewan is not using SNOMED, so they need to set this to a fixed value. In this case, it's our assess on the allergy intolerance. So we're going to go ahead and this time copy the message type, and that will allow us to just paste it in when we go to add the delta. So let's add the delta. We'll right click and paste. We'll click next, and there's the allergy intolerance. And we'll click next. This time we need to scroll down looking for the main entry point, which was again causality assessment. It's for reported reactions, and there it is there. And reported reactions, that's the right one. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. And we're looking for code. I believe it's code. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and add the code. And again, we're defining this because we're going to set it to be a fixed value. That's a definition. We'll click next. And here we have a form now to fill in for this code type, which is a code system type, coded data. So it's set to mandatory. We can see that it's a coded data type. It has a code system, act code. And here we come back and we'll just check, we're going to check what it's fixed to. So there's the word it's going to be fixed to. So we're going to go ahead and let's just copy that into our paste board. And we can just paste that in. So here the values that are set in Remixer are just generic defaults. There's no values preset. And we need to set this to coded no extensions for a fixed value. And next thing, everything looks good. We're just going to click save. And now we've set that code attribute to a fixed value. Again, it's a definition. We can go back and edit it there if we want to. If we need to check that we set it wrong or set it correct. And then we're ready to add our next delta. Okay, now we're going to go in and add a constraint node for the very code that we set fixed. So in this case, it's the RxNSS. What we want to do is record this business note or business rule that came out of the PIN documentation. So we'll go in, and rather than add the delta, there's another way to do this, in which is to just click on the existing message type. So we know the message type we're at, so we'll go ahead and click on it. And that takes us back to where we were. Here we can see the reported reaction. There's a red circle around it and a little blue indicator that says that we've done the definition. This time we're going to document it. Click next. And here what we have are there's three pre-existing usage notes descriptions. Here we want to go ahead and add a constraint, and we're going to type in the constraint that we want to add. Now in this case, we're just going to type this in as if we've just generating it from scratch. And we're going to say that because PIN is not using SNOMED, this is fixed to, and I think it was RxNSS. And once we've got that in, we'll go ahead and save that. Let's just double check we've got it set right. Yes, because PIN is not using, this code is fixed to RxNSS. We'll go ahead and, yeah, that looks right. Let's go ahead and make that bold to match the text, and we'll click next. Now we've added the constraint. We can see it at the bottom there. We're going to go ahead and save it. Now it's in there. So now we can see the bottom there we have attribute code documentation. And we're done. We've added the constraint node that goes along with setting it to fixed. Okay, for this next one we're going to go ahead and change the coding strength of a fixed entry. In this case we have a medication order, and we want to change its status to have a coded no extension. And again, this is just an example. We're going ahead and add the delta, where again we'll paste that in from our pasteboard that we just copied, and that should help us find which message type we're looking for. And there's a few choices here, but we want the drug order. Go ahead and click next. And once we've got there, now we're looking at the entire payload of this message type. And what we're looking for here is the business name of prescription status, or in this case, the XML path would be the combined medication request.code. So we'll go ahead and scroll through this rather large list of entity types until we find the combined medication request prescription. And I think I just saw it go by. Hang on, there it is there, yes. So we'll go ahead and select that, and we're going to find the code. That's what we want. There it is there. Now we're going to define this because we want to change it to coding no extensions. So we're going to go ahead and click on define as our choice and click next. That'll take us into a similar form that we had for the coded data. In this case, it's coded value. We want to go ahead and change its vocabulary strength, or what we'll call the coding strength, to CNE. Now in this case, we can see that that's set to CNE now. There was no default initially set. So the other thing though is this particular value has a mandatory fixed value. So let's just take a look at what that was. So we're going to go ahead, and before we save and add that, I think it was set to drug. Yes, there. So we want to make sure that we've got this fixed to drug while we're at it. So let's go back and change the fixed value to drug. Now in this case, again, the drop downs won't have any values of any meaning within Remixer, so we'll go ahead and type in drug. And now we've got it set to mandatory, it's coded no extension, and it's set to fixed value drug. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now here we get a warning that says that this is going to be incompatible. We're going to go ahead and save that again anyways. And now we've set in the definition of the code attribute, and you can see it there on the bottom row. Okay, now what we want to do here, because we've added this coded no extension and we set it to fixed, just like before, we want to go ahead and add in this constraint note. So we'll go back to the form here and we'll click on the drug order, and we'll go ahead and scroll down. Now in this case we can quickly find it because we see the red circle indicating that we've set a constraint. We don't see any of those anywhere else, so we know that's the right one. We'll click in, expand that. There again we can see the code has had a definition set. So we'll scroll up, and in this case now what we're going to do is document it. So again we'll click next. That'll take us into the documentation form. And in this case we can see that we want to add an annotation. Again, a constraint type is appropriate. This is a business rule from PIN. And we'll go ahead and type in that business rule that we saw on the slide. And we're going to set this to drug, I believe was the right fixed code. And again, we want to set that to bold, just like we had before, to match the documentation. That'll actually get rendered as bold, coming out as HTML within the documentation tooling. And we'll go ahead and save that. And now we've got the constraint note added that goes along with the fact that we've set that to a fixed value and set it to coding no extensions. And that is the second one completed. Okay, for this last one, what we're going to do is we're going to change a data type to a different data type flavor, and we're going to change the cardinality to mandatory. And we'll also record the note. So let's go ahead and copy in the message type. In this case it's a consent message. We'll go ahead and add a new delta, and we'll paste in the beginning of the message type to try and locate it within Remixer. There it is, it's a consent, that's the correct one. There you can see the business name shows up, and we'll click next. Now we're going to scroll down to find the entry point that we need. In this case it's consent event, and we're looking for effective time. So we'll go ahead and go back to the form, and we'll locate that within Remixer. So if we scroll down, should be, there it is, consent event with a business name of consent. So go ahead and select that, open that up, and we're looking for the effective time. There we can see it's still set to ts.fulldate. we'll go ahead and define that in order to change its flavor. So here we have the cardinality, and we can see here that the effective time was 0 to 1 as it's shown on the form, but we want to change the cardinality to 1-1 or mandatory. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. We could do 1-1, or we can simply just put in 1. Either way, they're equivalent. So we'll go ahead and just use 1. And while we're here, we're going to change this to mandatory. And then the last thing we need to do is change the flavor to ts.full date time. There it is there. Now we could go ahead and copy this into our buffer if we wanted to, or we could just type it in. And there it is, set to mandatory, conformance, cardinality 1, and change the flavor to full date time. Here it says that we've got an incompatibility. I'm going to go ahead and save that again to confirm that change. And now we've got the consent event effective time attribute as a definition changed. Now the last thing we want to do is go ahead and add in the constraint note that CREX defined this as 0-1. But we want to go ahead and set that as mandatory and change the flavor. So we'll go back to the consent, open that up, select the effective time. In this case, we're going to define or document it now, and we'll click Next. So we're going to add an annotation. We'll go ahead and leave it as a constraint, and we'll just type in that constraint note. And here we can see that CREX defines this as 0-1, but the effective time is required in PIN. So we'll go ahead and type that in. All right, let's just double check that we've got that correct. Okay, go ahead and select that to bold, and we'll click Next. Now, the next thing we want to do is just save that annotation, and now we've got our list of annotations. Now that's the last of the annotation changes that we're going to make, and the next thing is reviewing your changes. So there's 3 reports. We've got the change details report, which provides really a full journal of everything that you've done to the message set. You've got a revision sanity report, which is a report where it'll show any issues. So 0 rows are good. That means no issues. And we have a similarity report, which shows the differences, or similarities I should say, between the original values of the message set to its original source set. So over on the right hand side, you'll see the change details report link, a revision sanity check report link, and a similarity report. This is how you get to the reports. So let's start with the change details report. Here we see the full journal really of everything we've just done on this screencast. We've got conformance changes from required to mandatory, cardinality changes, data type changes, constraint notes, coding strength changes, fixed value assessments, and conformance changes again. So it's really a full summary of everything that we've done with all the details of the data that we set. This is a very useful report in reviewing and confirming that your message set constraints are complete. You can download the report in the top right link, and it brings down a spreadsheet that you can use offline to review. And that is the change details report. So go back to the previous screen, and here we see the rest of the reports again. Like I said, there's a similarity report, which if we click on Next, will really just highlight the changes that are different from the original values to the current message set original values. So again, this just highlights similarity sanity check report. It really just makes sure that your settings are conforming. And again, you can download the report as a spreadsheet file. Then we go back and we get the last report, which is really your sanity check report. We click on there, and again what we expect to see here are 0 rows. And there they are. There's no rows to show. We can see that normally you would list all the package name, the class names, which components are there. But here it gives us notes saying that there's really no errors. And that's the 3 reports. Now the last thing you do is download the message set. So once you're finished recording the message set constraints, you're going to download an XML format document that allows you to feed that into the generator to produce the MIF v2, which is then used to produce the libraries and documentation. So in order to do this, there's 2 buttons. One is download message set, the other is download the delta set. Now the first one, download message set, downloads the complete message set. So it's the full CREX in this case, including the constraints, whereas the second download button sends down just the changes. Now it's the latter that's normally used to feed into the tooling, but both are available in order to provide completeness. And that concludes our presentation on Remixer. I hope you found this brief introduction to Remixer a useful one. Thank you.